Nowadays in powerlifting, it seems like people are getting super strong very quickly with the number of junior lifters challenging for open world records and open world titles. It's very easy to look at these guys as well as the open world champions and think to yourself, they were just always this strong. They were born for this. They were strong the second they touched the barbell. They were benching 315 coming out of the womb. And while that might be the case for some of them, not necessarily for all of them, because there are a number of elite level powerlifters who didn't start off all that strong. And in this video, I'm looking at 7 examples of just that. Lifters who went on to become the best of the best. I'm talking world records, world championships, who in the first meet weren't anything too special. I'm going to be looking in this video at their first meet performances, showing you their lifts, as well as what their body weight was and what they look like, and what they ended up becoming with their finest powerlifting performances. So credit to this video goes out to JZZ972, who suggested I look at this. I read this and I really like this idea. I might even do more videos on this where I look at the world champions, the world record holders, and compare their first meets to now. I think that could be interesting as well. But for this one, I was focusing on the surprising aspect to it, which is lifters who weren't really anything special in their first meet. Now, to better define that, I set out a few criteria for myself. So the first criteria is what I define to be not that special / not that strong is a less than 400 dots at first meet. Now, I'm not saying a 400 dots isn't strong. It definitely is strong compared to obviously the average gym goer, hell, even the average powerlifter. I would say 400 dots is pretty strong. But when it comes to world records and world championships, 400 dots is a pretty long way off. My next criteria is the lifters had to have been at least 18 years old or over 18 years old at that first meet performance. The reason I put this in is because the intent of this video is to show that it doesn't necessarily matter where you start when it comes to powerlifting, because you could still end up as an elite lifter. And if I took sub juniors, then that kind of blurs that a little bit, because obviously they're going to get a lot stronger if they started lifting super young. For example, someone like Ilya Marichev, who totaled like 300 kilos at his first meet or even less, but it was like 12 or 13 years old when he competed, right? So that's not really in line with the intent of this video. And then finally, what I define to be elite is someone who's gone on to compete at the best meets in the world. So I'm talking Worlds, Euros, Sheffield, right? The best of the best. And given that I've looked for the 7 most extreme examples of this I could find, the lifters in this video have done more than just compete there. They've placed, they've podiumed, they've set world records. Hell, my 7th lifter on this list is actually someone who ended up winning a world title. Okay, so starting off, we have Ade Omisakin, who was the former 83 kilo total world record holder last year with his 861 that he did at Western Euros before Russ broke it at Sheffield. So he set a world record total. He was also the Euros champion earlier this year, and he lifted at Sheffield earlier this year as well. He's also going to Worlds as one of the favorites this year, nominated in 2nd place behind Joe Borenstein. So he's a heavy favorite to at least podium at Worlds and could potentially even win. So insane credentials there. However, if you look at his first meet, he wasn't always like that. So his body weight in his first meet, he was 20 years old back in 2019 when he first competed. I believe he came from a boxing background. 71.6 kilos was his body weight. And you can see he was obviously very athletic, definitely had an athletic background, but 71.6 kilos, 20 years old. Compared to what he is now, he's filled out the 83 kilo class. He set the world record with a body weight of 82.7. I believe he walks around a few kilos above and then does a small cut. He was 25 years old when he set that. So in the space of 5 years, he gained over 10 kilos of body weight. And as you'll see from his list, put a hell of a lot of kilos on that total. So first his squat. So here he is squatting 180 kilos. And he stood up with it well, but wasn't super easy. He had to grind through it a little bit. You look at his world record performance, his best ever squat was on that day where he hit 305.5. So he added over 125 kilos to his squat in those 5 years with that gain of body weight. Looking at his bench, he starts off with a 112.5 kilo bench. Again, smooth lift, but kind of sort of slow. 5 years later, he adds 80 kilos to that bench press with 192.5. Bench is probably his weakest lift, given he has pretty long arms, although 192.5 is a very respectable bench in the 83s. And finally, deadlift. Here he is at his first ever meet, deadlifting 220 kilos. This is back when he used to lift conventional. He has since switched to sumo. And you can see, even back then, deadlift was definitely his best lift. That 220 was probably the easiest out of all 3 lifts that he had. Fast forward 5 years, and he's added over 140 kilos to that. Moved up a weight class, switched to sumo, and has deadlifted 800 pounds. And those were all his best lifts that he did on that day, where he totaled 861 kilos for a new world record. So his first ever meet, he totaled 512.5 in the 74s, which is a decent, respectable total, but not anything that you would look at and think, oh, this guy's a real prospect. In the next couple of years, he could be up there. In fact, that first meet where he competed, that was at, I think it was the British University Championships or something, and he finished like in 12th, or he wasn't in the top 10, definitely, in his class. And it was funny, I was actually, to get that footage, I watched back, well, I didn't watch back, but I skipped through the entire live stream of that meet, which was like 5 hours long, trying to find the clips of Ade lifting. And in between his clips, there were these other random people who you've never heard of since, who just happened to lift at that same meet, and obviously, didn't stick with powerlifting or didn't take it as serious or whatever, but they still beat Ade that day. So there were quite a few people that day who ended up beating Ade, and 5 years later, the guy breaks the world record with 861 and becomes one of the best 83 lifters in the world, right? World record holder, and could well be a world champion. He's now the European champion in just a space of 5 years. So I can imagine all those people that competed against Ade at his first meet can now claim to have beaten the a future world champion in powerlifting, which is, I think, pretty cool. Sorry, a future world record holder. I'm not going to get ahead of myself yet, although Ade could win worlds and become a world champion this year. Okay, my next example is Joshua Wright, the German 74 kilo lifter. You might be thinking with Ade, okay, yes, he wasn't under 18, but he was still 19 years old. He was still relatively young. Okay, well, Josh Wright is a great example of someone who started when he was definitely not young. He was in his 30s, and he still didn't start off strong, and he still became elite. So he's placed top 5 at Worlds 3 times. You can see there, he even podiumed in 2022. He also won Euros last year. He placed 2nd this year behind Shell at Euros. And when he first started, he was 32 years old, and he started competing in the 74s, bodyweight of 73.9, and he has since spent his entire career in the 74s. So not only is Josh Wright a perfect example of someone who started powerlifting relatively later in his, I guess you would say, athletic career, right, being 32, he also wasn't someone who packed on a lot of weight or muscle. In fact, as you can see, this is a photo of him around the time that he competed at his first meet. He was already super jacked. I think he has a military background. He's done a lot of physical training before in his past, obviously. He was competing in CrossFit around this time as well. It looked like he was doing a lot of CrossFit training, looking through his Instagram around that time. So he obviously had a great athletic base and a great base of muscle. So at 32 years old, he decides to compete in his first powerlifting meet in 2018. And I'll show you his numbers, but at his best performance in 2025, 7 years later, came at 39 years old. So he's knocking on the door of his 40s, and he's the strongest he's ever been. And his body weight is pretty much the same. He was 73.2 at Euros this year, where he put up his biggest ever total. But I assume he just, cut more weight for that. So his body weight has stayed the same. He started competing at 32. He's now 39. So yeah, again, There's no, people out there thinking they're starting too late. I mean, just look at this guy, right? Okay, so what were his numbers back in 2018? Well, he hit this 185 kilo squat, which moved pretty damn easily. Like I said, I think he vastly undershot what his strength levels were at this first performance, because he obviously had way more than that. But fast forward to 2024, actually, when he hit his PB squat, 247.5, his best ever squat. That was at 2024 Worlds, I believe, which he matched at Euros. So he added, a good 60 kilos to his squat in those 6 years, which is, again, pretty noteworthy given that he was already in his 30s and he didn't gain any body weight in that time. And he already had a pretty significant training age, I would think, based on how muscular he was when he started as well. His bench, no surprises there. He started with a 142.5 bench, which is pretty damn strong bench for a first-time competitor in the 74s. No surprise based on how jacked he was. Quite long range of motion, pretty flat back there. So it seems like he didn't do a whole lot of benching before this. And again, it was a relatively easy lift, similar to his squat. And fast forward to 2024, where he hits his best of a bench to date of 190 kilos. This makes him one of the stronger benches in the 74 kilo class today. Almost a 50 kilo increase in bench press in that 6-year time frame. And deadlift, he started off with a 230 kilo deadlift. And like I said, all his lifts from that first competition looked pretty damn easy. And he's added 90 kilos to that since, with a 320 PB pull. You can see since he's almost brought his stance in a little bit more of almost a frog style stance now. But yeah, deadlift seems to be the lift that he's made the most gains in those 6 years. So his first meet, he totaled 557.5 as a 74, which again is a pretty solid total. But for someone who, like I said, was already in his 30s, had already lifted for quite a while, and was already super jacked, you wouldn't have thought that by the time he's in his late 30s, at the same body weight with roughly the same muscle mass, he would be lifting significantly more. But his best total since has almost been 200 kilos higher. 755 is his PB total, which he hit at Euros this year, where he finished second behind Shell. So almost a 200 kilo increase in total in 7 years, without any significant increase in body weight or muscle. I mean, I'm sure he's gained muscle because he's probably gotten leaner in that time. But yeah, he's not like he's moved up a weight class like Ade or some of the other lifters on this list will. And he's gone on to podium at Worlds. And again, this year, he's a strong podium threat for Worlds as well, lifting in Germany for Worlds in his home country. So pretty impressive progression from Josh Wright, which you probably wouldn't have expected given what his first meet performance and first meet stats were. Okay, on to our next one. We have Abdul Majeed Sulayman, or Mo, as he commonly goes by, who podiumed at Worlds back in 2022. That was in the 105s. He's now 120, and he actually started as a 93, which you'll see as I go through his lift shortly. He also lifted at Sheffield 2023. So, I mean, anyone who's lifted on the Sheffield stage, without a doubt, can put that on their resume as proof that they are one of the best powerlifters in the world. So 2017 is when he first started competing. Back when he weighed just 200 pounds, just over 90 kilos. He was 19 years old. So again, back to someone who started relatively young, although not in 18 or less, still 19 years old, same age as Ade. And since then, he's gained a insane amount of muscle. He's now 26 years old. His best ever total that he put up was last year, where, like I said, it was 26, and his body weight was just over 110 kilos. And I did feature him in my top powerlifting physiques video. I'll leave a link to that in the description. Mo is one of the most jacked guys out there, especially in the 120 weight class. It's pretty rare to see someone so muscular or so lean still in the 120s. So his first meet, he squatted 215 kilos. Like I say, this was back when he was a 93 lifter. and it was a pretty big grind there, but he stood up with 215. Fast forward 7 years, and he's now squatting 345 kilos as a 120 lifter. So well over 100 kilos he's added on there, which you would expect given a significant increase in body weight. Now his first ever bench was 130 kilos that he did. I couldn't find footage of this, so instead here he is benching 145 kilos, which he did at his second ever competition in 2018. So that's already a 15 kilo gain from what his first competition was. So he made his gains pretty quickly, as you could imagine. But he's since gone on to bench 220 kilos, which he also did last year. So that's a 90 kilo gain on his bench press PB from when he started competing, which is a pretty crazy jump. His first deadlift that he did was 225 kilos, just shy of 500 pounds. Again, I couldn't quite find footage of that, so here he is in the gym just a few months after his first competition, deadlifting 250 kilos. Which was a pretty grindy sort of pull. He's since gone on to deadlift a huge 382.5 that he also did last year. So adding almost 160 kilos to his deadlift, which is his best lift. And he's someone who, is up there for challenging for the world record. I mean, the world record is now up at 400 with Nonso, so I don't think he's quite that strong, but I think he can push his deadlift. I think he's got 390s potentially in him. So he is one of the best deadlifters in the world for his weight class. So his first powerlifting total was 570 kilos, which he did in the 93 kilo class. And in the 7 years since, he went up to the 105s, which is where he podiumed for Worlds. And he's since further moved up to the 120s, become super jacked, packed on a whole lot of muscle. And his best total is 937.5, over 2,000 pounds that he did last year. And like I said, he got a podium at Worlds. This year, he's definitely a podium threat for Worlds as well in the 120s. I think his strength is pretty far beyond the 937.5 that we saw. I do think he's capable of well into the 950s if he has a good day and puts it all together. And that is, a crazy progression for someone who, yes, he started pretty young. He was only 19, and he was in the 93s. He's jumped up 2 weight classes, which isn't even the most dramatic in this video. There is someone in this video who moved up 3 weight classes that we're going to see. But yeah, one of the best lifters in the world right now, and one of the most jacked powerlifters as well. Okay, back into the lighter weight classes. We have Joseph Jordan, who is a 66 lifter from US Virgin Islands, who's placed top 4 at Worlds on 2 separate occasions. So just missing out on podium in 2 years, in 22 and in 24 last year. So he first started competing in 2018 at the age of 29. So again, similar to Josh Wright, he started in his late 20s. He was almost 30 years old when he first competed, which again goes to show that you can make pretty crazy gains late in your life as well, even after you've already packed on quite a bit of muscle, filled out your frame. There are still gains to be had. So he was 71.8 kilos when he first competed. So he competed as a light 74. His best total came back in 2023 at 34 years old, where he also competed as a 74 lifter. He was 73.2. He's since kind of bounced between the 74 and the 66 classes, although since that meet in 2023, he's moved back down to the 66s, and I believe that's where he's staying now for the foreseeable future. So even though his best total was in 2023 as a 74, he is currently a 66, and he has been for the majority of his career. Also, how's that physique? That is insane. I'm realizing through this video that Joseph Jordan and Joshua Wright definitely should have been included in my top powerlifting physiques video, because that is absolutely crazy. Okay, so his first ever squat that he did was 192.5 kilos. So he always had a pretty strong squat. I mean, for a light 74 lifter, that is a strong squat, make no mistake. And he stood up with it with ease as well. You know, you would not be mistaken for thinking that that was an opener. He has since gone on to squat 260 kilos. So he's added almost 70 kilos to his squat. Again, this was done in the same weight class. I believe he's squatted, you know, pretty close to this as a 66. I mean, his 66 numbers aren't much lower. He's totaled 700. You'll see what his best 74 total was, but it's not too different. He first benched 135 kilos, so just shy of 300 pounds, which I couldn't quite find footage of again. So here he is instead benching 315 pounds, so about 142.5 kilos in 2018, so a few months after his first competition. Granted, it was a bit of a touch and go bench, but there he is benching about 7.5 kilos more a few months after his first comp in the gym. Since then, though, he's gone on to add quite a few more kilos to that. 172.5 has been his best bench since. And he's a very strong bencher, very technically proficient with it. And he's not going to door off that 400-pound bench. In training as a 66, he's hit 170 or potentially even the same weight as this. So it'll be interesting to see if when he competes as a 66 next time, which will be at World Games, because he got a wild card for World Games, I believe. It'll be interesting to see if he can match or even best that bench press in the 66s. In his deadlift, he deadlifted 187.5, just over 400 pounds, which again, I couldn't find footage of. So instead, here he is at his first meet, hitting 175. This was actually his second attempt. After this, he jumped 12.5 kilos and got it in his third. And I mean, yeah, based on the speed of that, you wouldn't be surprised that he jumped 12.5 and got it in his third. Probably looked just about the same as that, because that was like RPE 0. He has since added almost 110 kilos to that. 295 kilos here. And again, that moved pretty damn easily. I believe he's pulled over 300 kilos in the gym. So again, it'd be interesting to see what numbers he can take down into the 66s for his World Games performance this year. So he started out with a 515 kilo total. And without adding a significant amount of body weight, in fact, he pretty much stayed in the 74s, or added a few more kilos for his best ever performance, where he totaled 727.5 in 2023. Now, like I said, he has been a 66 the majority of his career, and his best total as a 66 has been 700. So it's not super far off. Both times he's finished fourth at Worlds as well has been at 66. With just shy of a 700 kilo total. So that's definitely where he's been the most competitive, and like I said, that is where he's staying now. He's not competing at Worlds this year, which is unfortunate because he would definitely be a podium favorite in the 66s this year, I think. But he is competing at World Games, which is cool, like I said, so interesting to see what he puts up there. But there you go, another lifter who is someone who started in his late 20s and without gaining a significant amount of body weight, got very, very strong despite not starting out super strong at his first meet. All right, next up, we go back into the higher weight classes. We have Victor Vazquez Hernandez-Carrillo, who placed top 5 at Worlds in 2023 in the 120s. He's now a 120 lifter. He's also podiumed at Euros twice in the last 2 years, finishing second in 2024 and third this year. When he started, he was 19 years old and weighed 90.4 kilos, just shy of 200 pounds. Very similar to Sulayman. In fact, they both started lifting at the same age at almost identical body weights and both ended up in the 120s, which is quite interesting. But yeah, like I said, now he's a fully filled out 120. Unlike Sulayman, he's actually filled out the weight class, 119.8 kilos, and he's now 29 years old. He hit his best total this year at Euros, so he's been at it for a decade, and it looks like he ate the old Victor because he's gained a whole lot of mass on his frame. Almost looks like a different guy. So his first ever squat at his meet was 190 kilos, which couldn't find footage of, but there is a screen grab of it there. His best ever squat is 350 kilos that he did at Euros this year. That was a crazy grind. He had a great performance at Euros. He PB'd all his lifts and his total in his home country to podium. Pretty good performance. But yeah, crazy. 160 kilos on his squat there. He benched 125 kilos at his first meet, which again, couldn't find footage. But here he is at his second meet, benching 135 kilos. And this was also in 2015, so a few months after his first meet, where he next competed, he added 10 kilos to his bench press already. And his body weight was also similar. He was just over 90 kilos. Pretty smooth lift. He has since added 100 kilos to his bench though from his first meet, benching 225. So, I mean, he's added just about 30 kilos of body weight, but it's not all been wasted fat because he's added 100 kilos to his bench, which is a pretty crazy stat there. Just shy of 500 pounds. And deadlift, he deadlifted 240. Again, I couldn't find any first meet footage. So instead, his second meet, which is the earliest I could find, he deadlifted 262.5 here. So he added 22.5 kilos in just a few months between his first and his second meet at roughly similar body weight. So as you would expect, you know, he made some pretty quick gains there. He was only 19, still pretty young. And that 262.5 moved pretty well. But 240 was his first ever pull. He has since gone on to deadlift over 100 kilos more than that. 355 kilos is what he hit at Euros to lock up that podium finish and that PB total. And that moved pretty damn well. It looks like there's quite a bit more there. So Victor is someone who is definitely a podium threat for Worlds this year, given where his total is currently at. Speaking of his total, he first started out with a 555 kilo total in the 93s. So like I said, similar to Mo Sulayman, he was a 93 lifter. He has since added 30 kilos, moved up not one but two weight classes into the 120s. And his best total is now 930, which is what he totaled to podium at Euros. So pretty insane how much he's added to his total there. That is a crazy... What is that? We're talking 375 kilo increase to his total. Damn. I mean, you know, you would expect a significant bump with a 30 kilo increase in body weight, but even then, that is more than you would expect. So, yeah, imagine going back 10 years ago and showing that Victor, the version of himself that hit 930 at Euros. Not only is he almost completely unrecognizable, but his strength increases is crazy. And he's still only 29, so he's not even in his 30s yet. He can still make a lot of gains. And like I said, at Worlds this year, he's definitely a podium favorite, or probably not favorite, but a podium threat definitely, alongside Mo Sulayman, who's coming in with a very similar nomination to him. So pretty cool to see those guys both going for podiums at Worlds, despite starting out a number of years ago, 2 weight classes down, and hundreds of kilos below where they are now. Alright, next up is Bryce Krawczyk, who is one of the best examples of this. He's finished top 4 at Worlds 3 times, including a podium in 2016 where he finished second, since finishing 4th twice in 2018 and 2021. 2 of those times was in the 105s, and 2021 he was a 120. He was the former world record holder in the deadlift in the 105s. In 2015, he actually held the 105 deadlift world record. And in 2021, he held the 120 deadlift world record. So he not only has held a world record in the deadlift in 1 weight class, but he's done it in 2 weight classes. So pretty prestigious guy there. And he's back at Worlds this year. So very interesting to see what he does at Worlds back. I think 2021 or 22 was his last ever Worlds performance. So yeah, it's been a couple of years. He first started all the way back in 2012, where powerlifting was just getting started as a sport, and he started out as an 83 lifter, and he was 24 years old. Now this is quite notable because, number one, he started out as an 83 and he's since moved up to the 120s. So it's even more dramatic than Mo and Victor, who started as 93 lifters. Bryce started a weight class even lower than that, which means he's moved up not one, not even two, but 3 weight classes in his powerlifting career, which is pretty crazy. And he was also 24 years old. So it wasn't like he was, like Ade or Mo or Victor, who were all 19 years old. So it was kind of understandable that they've had a lot of mass to add to their frames. Bryce was already 24. He was already an open level lifter. He wasn't even a junior. So to think that he could add almost 40 kilos of body weight, or a good 35 kilos of body weight at the age of 24, and hundreds of kilos to his total, would have been pretty crazy to think back then. But he has since totaled, well, actually I won't give away his numbers yet, but his best ever performance was last year in terms of total, which he did at a body weight of 119.1, and he's now 36 years old. So he's well into his 30s now. He's a true veteran of the sport, one of the OGs when it comes to powerlifting YouTube as well. So everyone loves Bryce. His tutorials back in the day were crazy beneficial to everyone, I'm sure. But similar to Victor, that physical transformation is probably even more dramatic than Victor. It's probably the most dramatic, because 2024 Bryce looks like he absolutely devoured 2012 Bryce and ate him for breakfast, and that's what he ended up looking like. Pretty insane. But you can see, he's added a lot of mass. You can't expect him to still be super lean at his body weight now, but he has gained a pretty proportionate amount of strength, as you'll see. So in his first meet, he squatted 197.5, and you can see he was pretty raw in the sense that he was literally very raw, because he did this with no sleeves, no knee sleeves, just a powerlifting belt. And given that he was bare knees in his first meet, 197.5 is a pretty good squat. But he has since gone on to squat 327 kilos, which is a full 130 kilos heavier than when he first did. He has since got a pair of knee sleeves, but here he's squatting over 700 pounds at Nationals last year. And he benched 110 kilos at that first meet. Unfortunately, there's no footage of him benching 110, and I couldn't really find any real early footage of him benching. So instead, here's a pic of when he used to be a singer in a heavy metal band or something, which was pre his powerlifting days. So back when he was a lot skinnier than what he is now. He has since gone on to bench over 200 kilos, 205, which again he hit at Canadian Nationals last year. His best ever in competition. Hell of a grind too. Real fight to lock that one out. Bryce has also lifted on the equipped side, and gone to worlds equipped as well. So he's true hero in powerlifting. Bench has always been his weaker lift, but deadlift has been his strongest. That's where he set his world records. His first meet, he did 237.5, and pretty dramatically, he just runs up to the bar, grabs it, and yanks it off the floor. Back when he was a conventional lifter. Again, he was pretty damn strong still. To be able to walk up to 237.5 like that, and like I said, he was an 82 point something. So this is almost 3 times body weight, which is pretty damn decent on your first attempt at a powerlifting meet. He's since switched to sumo though, and this has been the lift that blew up the most dramatically, because his best ever deadlift is almost 150 kilos more than this. 385.5 is the most he's ever pulled, which he actually did back in 2021 Worlds, where this was his 120 kilo world record that he set. 385.5, and moved pretty damn smoothly too. So Bryce is without a doubt one of the best deadlifters in the world. I'm very interested to see what his deadlift will look like at Worlds this year, and whether or not he gets a chance to load up big and pull for podium, because that'll be pretty cool to see. But yeah, Bryce initially, like I said, as an 83 lifter, totaled 545 kilos, just over 1,200 pounds, which is a solid total for an 83 on his first time out for sure. But if you had said to Bryce that, hey, in 12 years' time, you're going to total over 900 kilos as a 120, almost 40 kilos heavier, over 2,000 pounds, I don't think he would have believed you. Like I said, this looks like almost a completely different guy. He's, like I said, added 40 kilos body weight. He added 300 and what's that, like 370 kilos to his total. Absolutely insane. There's something about 120s and having dramatic physical and strength transformations, because it's been a theme with Mo, Victor, and Bryce. And as I was looking through elite lifters and going back through to their first meet to see who I could use for this video, I was surprised that there were quite a few 120s that popped up. But yeah, Bryce probably had the most dramatic physical transformation, and arguably you could even say the most dramatic strength transformation, given that he was 24 when he started. So, you know, someone who you would think wouldn't have as many gains left as he's had. And my final example, I promised a world champion in this video, and it is Panagiotis Tarinidis, who is not only a world champion, he's a two-time world champion in those 2 years, 21 and 23, in the 66s. He's also a two-time Euros champ in those same years. And he's also lifted at Sheffield not once, but twice. So this guy has been one of the best lifters in the world for quite a few years now. Multiple time world champion and Euros champion. Multiple time Sheffield lifter. He's never hit any world records, somewhat surprisingly, on any lift or total. But he's always been close and thereabouts. He's gone above the world record total in the gym a bunch of times before. When he first started, it was all the way back in 2016. He was 21 years old and he was in the 74s. So kind of similar story here to Joe Jordan, who started in the 74s and since spent the majority of his career in the 66s. Same here for Panna. He was 21 years old, weighed 73.2. This is a photo of him from around that time when he did his first meet. So obviously he had been in the gym for a number of years at that point and decently jacked. Fast forward to his best ever meet. It was done last year. He actually did it at a body weight of 69.7. So it was a meet where he lifted as a light 74, only a few months after he totaled 713 at 66, which is his best 66 total. So similar to Joe Jordan, even though most of his performances were at 66, including his best performances placing wise, his best total did come as a light 74 still. So looking at his squat, his first squat that he did was actually 175 kilos, which I couldn't find footage of that first performance that he had. So here he's instead squatting 190, which is the earliest squat video I could find. And this was actually in early 2018. So this was, you know, a year and a bit after his first performance. So you can see him squatting 15 kilos more than we did in his first meet pretty smoothly, pretty easily. And since then, he's added almost 90 kilos to that squat, which is pretty significant given his body weight. He's squatted 260 kilos. And his squats and his lifts in general are always a grind. Of course, he's famous for being the king of the grind. 260 kilos, starting out with 175 at, I was going to say a lower weight class, lower body weight though, because he was 73 something, he was 69 something in this one. You can see from his body weight transformation I showed you before, he's definitely, I mean, it's hard to say he's packed on a lot of muscle because his body weight hasn't gotten, you know, he's actually weighed less than when he did his first meet. He's definitely gotten leaner though, so, you know, he definitely would have gained some muscle. His first bench was 120 kilos. Again, I couldn't find footage of this, so here he is from his earliest bench that I could find, which isn't in a video, it's just a screenshot of him. That looks like around 120 kilos, roughly, or thereabouts, on the bar there. Or what's that, 115 probably. But he's since gone to bench 180 kilos, one of his best lifts. 180, and again, he loves a good grind here. That's not even the grindiest bench we've seen from him, not even close. But yeah, he's benched 180 in training multiple times, and he's done it in competition there, just shy of 400 pounds. 60 kilo increase in bench press, which is very impressive considering that he did his 180 at a lower body weight than his 120. It's quite difficult to increase your bench as you decrease body weight, as I'm sure anyone who's attempted that can attest to. And finally, deadlift. He deadlifted 205 kilos at his first meet, which again, sorry, no footage. But I did find this footage of him doing 225, which he did in 2018, or start of 2018. So just a year and a bit after his first meet, he managed to add 20 kilos to his deadlift. Go from 205 to 225 there. He has since deadlifted 290 kilos though, which again he did at that same meet, 290. I believe his best deadlift as a 66 is around 282.5 or 285, and he's deadlifted up to 300 in the gym as well. So he's added, you know, almost 100 kilos to his deadlift, which is, like I said, given the lower body weight, pretty damn impressive. So his total, he started out with a 500 kilo even total in the 74s as well, so body weight of 73 something. And he has since gone on to total 730 kilos has been his best performance since. Like I said, that was as technically in the same weight class as a 74, although he did it as a 66 who didn't water card. He weighed 69 something. His best total at 66 is 712 or 713, I believe, actually. And like I said, he's totaled over 700 on multiple occasions. He's won worlds not once but twice, as well as Euros, as well as lifted at Sheffield. So he's become one of the most popular powerlifters in the world today. You can definitely give him that title. And you would not have really expected that based on where he started. Like I said, a 500 kilo total in the 74s, nothing crazy special. Another thing with Pana that's quite interesting is obviously Pana competes a lot. He always does, he always has. Even from his early days, he's competed multiple times a year. It took him a while to, you know, he made incremental progress is what I'm trying to say. A lot of the other lifters on this list, after their first meet, their second meet is instantly like a 50 plus kilo jump to the total, then another 50 plus kilo jump. And within 1 to 2 years, they already have made most of the gains that they made, right? Pana is someone who had a slower rise, probably due to the fact he didn't really gain much body weight, or he actually went down a weight class, probably played into that. But even in his, I think that was his 4th ever meet that I showed you, which was the deadlift that I showed you where he did 225. That was his 4th meet, you know, a year and a half after his first one, and he added 20 kilos to his deadlift. Impressive, sure. I think he totaled 570, I want to say, or 560 something at that. So he did add quite a few kilos there. But he still was totaling in the low 500s at his, I think his first 2 or maybe even 3 meets. And then it took until his 5th meet to get into the 600s. And then, you know, obviously he progressed pretty steadily, but not quite as quick as some of the other lifters in this video. But there you have it. Those are my examples, the most extreme examples I could find of 7 elite level powerlifters who are at the top of the sport today, who didn't really start off super strong at their first meets. And you probably wouldn't have guessed that they were going to end up as strong as they are. So yeah, hopefully this video gives people some motivation to say that where you start up is not necessarily where you're going to finish.